Welcome to Club Fitting Chronicles.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Club Fitting Chronicles. It's me, Josh. I'm here with Gene.
Hey, Josh. We've had a little bit of weather here.
We've had a long week, for sure, of rain and almost a cold front, which for those of you who aren't Arizona natives and don't understand what we mean by cold front, that's anything under 70 degrees. So take that as you will.
It was 57 walking the grandkids to school today. I was like, I was looking for ice, and we still have lakes in all of the retention areas. We could go kayaking.
Right.
Probably even get a speedboat in and do some water skiing because some of them were really full. But I was in Idaho, so I missed all that. I got to see snow up in the mountains, which is the best place for snow to be. Nowhere near me. 2,000 miles later, we're home.
Wow, that's incredible.
So, Gene, 6 days.
Yeah, this is true. I'd much rather be there than somewhere where it's hot. I mean, we endure, like I tell people all the time, we endure the summer for times like these, where we have, rain. We, as much as, we need the rain, but that was a little too much for me.
Well, we got half a year's worth.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't mind golfing in the rain. It's just when it starts to affect the golf courses.
You mean like when the golf course is closed because it's flooded?
Yeah, something like that. So, Gene, we got a really cool topic today for our listeners and issues people may run on with buying clubs off the rack.
Or just even using their clubs. Today was a perfect example. I'm playing with a gentleman who is probably about 52, 53, really in great shape. Number one, now I'm at Apache Creek. We don't play Las Colinas anymore because they now have their full membership, means you get to play 100 rounds in a year, and then you start to pay after that, which I don't understand how that's called full membership. So anyway, Bill and I have moved over to Apache Creek. So we're playing number one. He's playing from the blue tees. He has 85 yards in. So he hit the ball pretty well.
Right.
On number 9, he hit a 9-iron from the blue tees. Came up, front edge of the green. Let's see what else. Number 2, he had 60 yards in. So he could hit the ball a long way.
Yeah, he could hit the ball.
But he also hit some balls 90 yards left of the fairway. And he also hit some balls probably close to 90 yards right of the fairway. And his comment was, I don't know what's going to happen next. I pick up his driver, and the swing weight on it was he had a 55-gram shaft in it. And the swing weight was probably about D0. And then he had gone to hitting his 3-wood, which was, probably even a little head lighter. I threw about 5 pieces of 2-inch lead tapes on his 3-wood. And on number 18 from the blue tees, he was 65 yards in.
Wow.
And that was with the 3-wood. On number 16, he hit my wedge from the blue tees, and it was the first ball he hit straight all day with an iron. Well, my swing weight on my wedge is D7, somewhere around there. His was like D1. And he was like, wow. Oh my God, I could feel the club head. So that's kind of the stuff we're going to talk about. Things that people... his comment was, I think I need new clubs. And my comment was, you'll get the exact same things you have.
Right.
Except for they'll be shinier.
Right.
So that's kind of the topic, how I was thinking through it. And anything, obviously, that you have seen, throw in there. You play with better golfers than I play with. Since I would think most of your rounds are with your teammates.
For the most part, yeah.
So anyway, driver. That was the first thing. And most people do not know how to set up with the driver. And I even have my driver here. And tell me if you've ever seen this setup position. So I have the driver is in the middle of my stance, and my hands are out here. And then we kind of hood it, so we have about a half a degree of loft, and then we try to swing, and we wonder why it goes right.
Right.
So where do you normally, where's your hand position when you're hitting a driver?
Mine?
Yeah.
Usually kind of in front
But how
of
far
myself.
forward is the ball?
Oh, not at all. If anything, I play my driver just on the inside of my left heel.
Okay. And so are your hands in front of that, or even with that, or behind that?
I'd say even.
Okay.
About even.
You know, most of the time for most people, you know, it depends. If you're fighting a hook, yeah, putting your hands a little forward is probably a good thing. If you're fighting a slice, putting your hands forward is a bad thing. Rule of thumb I give most people, start off pointing, you know, just left of your zipper on your pants.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and again, the ball being, you know, like for me, you know, I use the tip of my shoulder, which is just inside my left foot.
Yeah, I always have it, the button of the club pointing left of my belt buckle.
Okay.
Just to give you some reference of where my club sits.
Yeah, so that's basically the same place.
Yeah.
But, you know, how many higher handicapped people do you see set up like that?
Not many.
Yeah.
They usually have it way behind, and they're either in the middle of their belt buckle or just right of their belt buckle.
Yeah, and that's a tough way to try to hit a ball.
Right.
Other things, shafts too stiff. You know, see probably for every shaft that's too soft, I see 10 that are too stiff. Why? Because most people think they hit the ball 320 yards and they need a stiff shaft because I swing hard. Well, for them, hard means I'm using a lot of physical effort. Doesn't mean the club head's moving quickly.
Right.
Just means I'm making a big physical effort move at that, so I need a stiff shaft. And you know, Doug, you know, out in Tennessee when we were playing together, hits the ball a long way. You know, he's still a great athlete. I had him hitting my Newton 2-dot, which is a 70-mile-an-hour shaft. He's probably swinging, I don't know, 108 to 112, somewhere in there. Ball still goes straight. You know, it felt a little wonky, maybe, because of, you know, he was swinging so hard. But as far as, you know, stiffness, most people, you know, today playing with the other gentleman that was in the group, he's probably mid-70s and club head speed maybe 60 miles an hour. And he had a regular shaft, and it was a heavy regular shaft.
Yeah, right. They usually fit them in like a 75 or an 80.
Well, and I don't think he even got fit for this. I think it was just, you know, bought it somewhere.
Wow.
But it's just, you know, most people don't think they need to be fit. They think that just new clubs will do it. And,
Right.
you know, face angle. How many of your golfers on the golf team understand how the face angle on an adjustable driver works?
Very
that you
few.
didn't explain it to them.
Very few. Yeah. I mean, they misinterpret face angle and loft, and you know, they always I wouldn't say always, but most of the time generally they think that has to do with flight on the golf ball at the loft. And when you have to explain, you know, the face, it's not moving, you know, it's not moving this way.
Right.
It's moving this way. Yeah. And you know, when you explain it to them that way, they understand it. Without getting into the you know, scientific mumbo jumbo to their ears.
Right.
But yeah, they, for the most part, you know, most golfers, you know, a lot of amateur golfers, they misinterpret that for height rather than shutting or opening the face.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, you know, the hardest thing, you know, I would say 95% of the time my comment to golfers is put it to the highest loft. And they look at me, well, I already hit it high. Yeah. But it's the loft is the same. It's just not going to go 40 yards right now.
Right.
You know, it's going to be a little closer to square. You know, I would think if I would take all the drivers that I've ever measured that were an adjustable head, the standard loft, just sitting on the skate, the little machine that you put the club into and run the protractor up to it, the average loft is probably 12 and a half degrees. If it's more open, there was a guy the other day playing with the old Nike driver, their first adjustable that was that really kind of cool red head. You remember that one?
Oh yeah, the covert driver.
Yeah. Well, that was like in neutral position. That was like 8 degrees open, and it was like, what was it? 14 and a half degrees loft. And I would say 3 out of every 4 drives, Bill and I looked at each other. We had no idea where the ball went because it went straight up.
Oh yeah.
He was probably getting some hang time of, he hit one drive and I thought it was absolutely crushed. And then it went up and up and up.
Just ballooned.
And it probably got close to 150, 200 feet up in the air.
Wow.
And, came down and rolled out an inch. And, he had pretty good club head speed. And I outdrove him all day long.
Right.
Because his ball went this way. And and he would have to try to manipulate. Yeah. He would, watching him set up, it was like, okay, he's been playing with this one for a while because he knows that it goes right.
Right.
And he had figured out a way to make it go a little bit right. But,
right.
The fact that if they, are trying to sell you on an adjustable face, always set it to the highest loft if you're a slicer, because that'll get you closest to square. Let's see what other things that I write down. Oh, it's too long. And most of the people that I'm playing with are older. So what do they do with their too long driver? They stick a bigger grip on it and start choking down.
Yeah.
And they can't feel the head.
Right.
And you'll see the pull left, the push right, the top.
Yeah.
and every different ball.
My favorite thing is the Jumbo Maxes, the Jumbo Max grips, the Bryson DeChambeau
Jumbo Max,
grips.
The newest ones are lightweight. If they have an old Jumbo Max, those were like 110 grams.
Right.
And so the swing weight is probably A0.
Right.
And the thing that people, when they put those big grips on and then choke down, which again, I appreciate the fact that they figured out it's too long, but you can't put big on and then choke down without doing something to adjust it. I had an email from Zach. We've been emailing for almost a year. He's asked a lot of different great questions, and he's got a 5-wood that he was trying to do something with. Swing weight was C8. He has a jumbo grip on it, and his driver is E1. And he was like, how can I get this up to... And he said, I know I could do it if I put 4 miles of lead tape on the head, but, I don't want to try to do that. And so I found out it was an adjustable head. I said, well, you might be able, if there's a way into the head through that adjustable, that weight screw, you could go to someone and have it hot melted to bring it up, the swing weight up. You don't have to go all the way up. You could use some lead tape. You could put a heavier screw in there. Maybe look and see if you can find an acceptable different grip that's lighter. But short of that, you have to come up with a way of making the head feel heavy enough. And that's one of the things that most people never think of. They think of, I had a grip, I put a new grip on. It's the same.
Right. 2 negatives don't equal a positive.
Right.
Yeah.
Other things, anything that stands out to you about when you see people with drivers? How about tee height?
Yeah, I always see the guys that are like, do you have any extra long tees? And I'm like, oh, no. They're like, do it for long drives, long drive guys. And I go, no, we don't have the tees you're looking for, but we have these tees. Oh, I can't hit a ball if it's not teed up high enough. I go, well, you really don't want to tee a ball up that high, to be fair.
Unless you're coming out of your stance to...
Yeah, I mean, even then it's like, how many people are like that,
right,
naturally? I don't know. I think, too, the other thing that I see a lot is the adjustable, the face angle, the lack of understanding what that does. I think that's a pretty big thing nowadays, is people misinterpret that for height, loft and how high they're going to hit the ball. And you see people all the time where, they hit the moon ball. And I could say this because I also hit the moon ball. You can attest to this. And even when we were first doing this, whole thing back, 3 or 4 years ago now, I said the same thing to you. I was like, I already hit the ball high. I don't need a higher loft. And it's like, well, no, that's not quite what's going on. The face isn't moving the way you think it is. And I think, that's kind of, a pretty big misinformed topic for most people nowadays is understanding the loft.
I also still see people who try to tee it up so that the ball's in the middle of the face.
Right.
And what does that promote? Hitting down. What is
right? Downward attack angle. Right.
Nice little fade. And
right.
most people can fade it in any position.
Right.
And it just helps them to fade it more. So
right.
That's the, short of golf swing things, those are the
right.
things I see the most. Fairway woods. Things that stand out to you when you see somebody hitting fairway woods? Stance
is definitely a big thing that I see. Ball position. A lot of people tend to play it like a driver.
Yep.
And I think that's one of the bigger issues is the 3-wood is a club of its own, and it's not a driver.
Right.
And kind of same thing too with the adjustable loft side of it as well. There's adjustable 3-woods and 5-woods out there that people misinterpret that for height as well. Length in the 3-wood is another thing too. You see a lot of 3-woods that are too long for people, and 3-wood is not a club where you're wanting to hit it super far. You want something,
and it's just hard to hit when it's super long.
It's exactly right. It's already a hard enough club to hit as is. Why make it even harder on yourself? You want something, at least for me, and I'm not a tour player or anything like that. I'm sure there's people out there that are tour players that have a different philosophy, or they might agree with me. I don't know. My stance on it is this. You want your 3-wood to be an off the tee club and controllable, because you're going to hit it into greens you're not trying to hit it 300 plus. I have some guys I've played golf with. They're like, oh, I hit my 3-wood, 280, 290. It's like, that's too long, in my opinion. I mean, I would have a hard time having a club, because at that point, just if you can't control it, what's the point?
Right.
What's even the point of having a 3-wood? You're just practically hitting another driver. And at that point, I just think it's counterproductive. But those are the main things I see.
Well, and your 3-wood is 42.5 inches long, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And the store average is 43 3/4.
Right.
Just how easy is it to set up to it? Just, ball on the ground.
Right.
Easy, 43 3/4. My driver is 44 1/4. So
right, you're not that far off.
I don't like hitting driver off the deck.
Right. That's the other thing too. You're exactly right. It feels awkward. It's just an awkward feeling, and you're trying to fight that the whole time. And when you're trying to swing, you're fighting it. You're trying to fight it, and just like I said before, it becomes counterproductive. Like why? Like, why even do that?
You get some people who try to swing a little bit too upright with a 43 3/4 inch driver. Where's it going to go? Right into the dirt.
Right.
Or they invent a way to swing, and they swing more around them.
Right.
Trying to pick the ball, and now you got it. It's like a merry-go-round type swing, and you got this little teeny window of the club heads going in the right direction.
Right.
And then you put the ball wherever you put the ball, and what's the chance? Shaft. A lot of people, when they're buying a set of clubs, most of the time you'll find that the fairway wood and the driver is the same weighted shaft.
Right. They'll be like 50 to 60 grams.
And that's just too light again.
Right.
It's not sitting up on a tee, it's down on the ground. They have to have enough feet.
What I love, Gene, is when they have an 85-gram shaft in their driver, and then they'll have a 50-gram shaft in their 3-wood.
Yep.
And then they wonder, well, I hit my 3-wood so much better. Well, you got two options here. One, you're not hitting your 3-wood that good. You're just hitting it better than your driver because your driver shaft is way too heavy for you. So, you probably need a heavier shaft in your 3-wood too. So swap should be the opposite. Yeah. Anyway.
The other thing I see more with the older people, a lot of people need to ditch their 3-woods and go to 4-woods or 5-woods.
5-woods. Yeah, for
because
sure.
It's easier to get the ball up in the air.
Right.
You hit a ball and it goes, let's say it gets 20 feet off the ground with your 3-wood.
Mm-hmm.
It ain't going a long way unless you're playing in Arizona in the summer and you hit the cart path.
Right.
Because the launch angle is so low that you got to rely on roll.
Right.
Get the ball up in the air, it can carry further. You're not, older people, you're not going to launch the ball 150 yards up into the air, but you need more loft to get the ball airborne. How many touring pros do you now hear them, talking about carrying a 7-wood?
Yeah, I was going to say that
or even
too.
a 9-wood.
Right.
Why do they do that? Because it's easier to hit a wood up in the air because of the center of gravity being back in the head than it is to hit a hybrid of the same loft.
Right.
Plus, most of the hybrids that people are using have a 370 tip shaft in it, so that doesn't bend as much as a 335 tip shaft. So the shaft isn't going to help you get the ball up in the air. And the loft that you have, because most of the lofts are 15 degrees for a lot of 3-woods, that's not enough loft unless you're if you're swinging over 100 miles an hour, that's enough loft. But if you're less than that, unless you do something funky to get the ball up in the air, there's not enough loft.
Right. You have more things working in your favor in that way than a hybrid.
Yep. Now, hybrids, the thing that I find most people don't understand, it's not a fairway wood.
Right.
Most people think, this is a fairway wood, so they set up like they're going to hit their fairway wood and they cold stone top it.
Right.
What is a hybrid? An iron. Where do you set up with your hands with an iron? At no more than even with the face, maybe slightly ahead of the face. It's a downward blow. It's not a pick swing. And most people just don't understand that with a hybrid. And then they also, because of what I find interesting is a lot of hybrids that I've seen over the years are closed, maybe a degree. Some of Callaway used to have a couple of hybrids that were 2 degrees closed. Mm-hmm. Well, you go to watch them set up and they'll do this with it. Well, now you're throwing the leading edge at the golf ball. Right.
You wouldn't do that with an iron. So why do it with a hybrid?
Right. No. Just like fairway woods, a lot of them are too long. A 4-iron was always 38.5 inches until magically they started to grow a couple years ago. But the 4-iron replacement is 41 inches. Well, yes, technically, and most people will swing it faster. You had, let's say, your 20-degree 4-iron, you have a 20-degree hybrid, and you have added weight, and it's got a lighter shaft in it. What happens to your 4 hybrid distance compared to your 4-iron? Ball, if you make good contact, goes further. What do you now have? A gap between your 5-iron and your 4 hybrid, where when they were first came out, most hybrids maybe a half an inch longer than the iron replacement. But in the last 20 years, they get longer. So if you're having issues with, I have a gap between this club and this club, my 5 hybrid, that's, I start at a 6-iron. My 5 hybrid is 38.5 inches long. And it's the same loft that my 5-iron would be, but I can hit the ball up in the air higher. And if I happen to hit it on the toe, it draws back towards the target. If I hit it on the heel, it fades back towards the target because it's got bulge and roll on it. And I can, I have better misses. Let's see what else. A lot of the time, just like with the fairway woods, they weigh the same amount as the driver. You got a 60-gram driver shaft, you got a 60-gram fairway wood, and you got a 60-gram hybrid shaft.
Right.
Well, most people, I don't know, 7,000 whatever sets of irons and hybrids and stuff I've made, Most hybrids, the driver is the lightest shaft. Fairway wood, 10 to 15 grams heavier for most people. Now, if you are like swinging at 27 miles an hour, yes, you need the lightest shaft humanly possible.
Yeah.
But if you're a halfway decent golfer, you can hit the ball a little bit, hybrid, usually no lighter than the fairway wood, usually 10 to 15 grams heavier. And it's simply because it's the way I'm swinging it. It's more like an iron. It should be closer to my iron weight than it should be to my driver weight. Now, again, there are some people that every club in their bag is 60 grams, and they struggle mightily with some area of the bag because of that. But other thoughts, other things you see with hybrids?
You pretty much hit the nail on the head. Yeah, it's very similar to the fairway woods as far as issues go, and Aussie driver, setting it up. Once again, you'll see a lot of people, they're trying to hit up on it as if it's a driver or a fairway wood or something like that. And it's exposing the leading edge, as you said, and you wouldn't want to do that with your iron. Why set up your hybrid that way?
A 7-foot high ball.
Right. or skull it across the green, Yep. But yeah, no, that's really the main issues I see is setup. And also too, people misinterpreting what lofts mean what. Some people think you get a four hybrid and you're replacing a certain iron. For the most part,
they think
the degrees are different.
Means 4 iron.
Correct. Right. So whatever number that hybrid is, that's what iron they're replacing, which I think is a bit of an issue. I think people need to understand the difference in that. Because it's a big difference. And like you said, that creates huge gapping. You have a 5 iron and a 4 hybrid. Well, I have a 4 hybrid and I ditched my 4 iron. Well, why'd you do that? I couldn't hit my 4 iron, so I got a 4 hybrid. And I was like, and then, how far do you hit your 4 hybrid? Well, I hit it about, 210 yards. Well, how far do you hit your 5 iron? About 170. That's a pretty big gap, especially
if they needed to get is a 5 hybrid.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So it's always about the loft, not the number on the bottom of the club, which is confusing to most golfers.
Yeah. And it's totally understandable for people who don't understand that. It's a very simple mistake to make.
Yep. Irons. Thing I see most people have way too many low irons. I see probably 50% of golfers carry lower lofted irons than I carry. Now, even though my back is out and I'm having some turning issues, I can still beat most of my fellow old persons out on the golf course. And I watch them hitting these nice, 10-foot high 4 irons that scamper across and roll over the back of the green and, out into the desert now. It's like, no, you don't, if you can't get the ball well enough up in the air, don't carry it. So unless, I get this one. This is for getting out from under trees. Well, let's get a better driver.
Right. Let's hit more fairways.
We're not having to forever get from underneath trees.
Right.
The other thing I see, which is, to me, is a little humorous. Now, to save money, a lot of sets stop at a pitching wedge. They give you the option of an A wedge. I don't want that. I'll go to I have a sand wedge and I have my lob wedge. Well, their pitching wedge maybe is 44 degrees.
Right.
Their sand wedge, I know, is between no less than 54 degrees, probably 55, 56 degrees. So they got 12 degrees between their pitching wedge and their sand wedge, which means, let's say if you can hit your pitching wedge 100, you can hit your sand wedge maybe 65. How frustrating is golf when you can't hit the green from 90 yards out because you don't have that club? That was always the thing when I would build sets. People would go, I'd go, we can make it through an A wedge. Oh, no, I don't need an A. Okay. How far do you hit your pitching wedge? Oh, I hit it 110. Okay. How far do you hit a sand wedge? Oh, maybe 80. Okay. What do you do when you're 100? Well, I try to hit hit it less. Well, how good are you at that?
Right. Right.
You know, I would much rather have scoring clubs than clubs to get the ball out from under trees.
Right.
You know, from a college golfers, they probably have those clubs in their bag, but the older people, they tend to avoid those clubs because they think that it's just an extra club.
Right.
I already got 3 wedges, for, most of my life. We played with, pitching wedge and a sand wedge. I only needed 2 wedges. Well, the problem is the pitching wedge is no longer a pitching wedge.
Right.
So, shafts too stiff. Again, the guy today that I was playing with that was killing the ball. I mean, he hit my regular flex shaft, hit it dead square straight. His shafts were Uniflex, which was always one of the most hilarious types of shafts I've ever heard.
Yeah,
this
Uniflex
will adjust to you. How does a shaft adjust to you?
Yeah.
And it was, generally speaking, a Uniflex shaft is an A-flex shaft. Well, it wasn't the weight, it wasn't the flex of the shaft that was his issue. It was the fact that it had no swing weight, and the grips were small. Something just fell. Anyway, a lot of golfers are playing with R-flex shafts. The heavier the shaft, the stiffer it plays.
Right.
And a lot of people, have 5-6-year-old clubs. They're, R-flex or S. And, again, I give them my shaft. My shaft is about a 70-mile-an-hour shaft. And they go, wow, this feels really good. I like the way it feels like the ball explodes. Well, that's because it's softer. It doesn't beat you up. But shafts too stiff. How to aim an iron.
Yes.
That's the thing that I just, look at the very bottom groove. Put that perpendicular to your target. Most people look at the top line and they try to aim with that top line. And where's the ball going? It's aimed left. And then if they swing far enough outside to in, they'll hit a big cut. But how to aim? People just don't understand that's the bottom score line. Aim that. One that just I'm shocked at with adults cleaning the grooves.
Yeah.
I see so many people that, you look at the iron and the grooves are filled in. Now, there are studies and you can get the ball. If you have perfect contact off of a mat and you had no grooves, the ball will spin more. But as soon as you have grass in the way and the grooves there's no grooves where the grass can get into the grooves or the dirt can get into the grooves, where does it go? In between the club face and the ball. And you get a knuckle ball. Mm-hmm. You get, you can't control it. Why do touring pros hate playing out a 3-inch rough? Because you can't control the ball. Because there's so much in between the club face and the ball. Clean the grooves because they're there to help you. It's not something that makes the ball spin. It gives the grass and dirt a place to hide. Let's see. If your clubs are more than 5 years old, probably, and you're older like me, one of the things you might run into, shafts are too heavy because 5 years ago they used a lot of dynamic golds and KBS tours.
Yep.
But if you bought a new set of clubs, for a lot of people, the shafts are too light because now everything is 90 grams.
Right.
And,
the recoils or,
even 60-gram shafts. You never would see clubs with 60-gram shafts. And what does that do? Tempo. Right. When the shaft is too light, tempo becomes an issue. When the shaft is too heavy, holding the angle becomes the issue. It's just too much weight. So people release, their hands go down and they release the club. But most people, again, like the guy today, we were talking about, what we did in our former lives. He was a former SWAT officer and another guy was a pilot. And I said, well, I was a club fitter. And they kind of looked at me like, well, what does that mean? And, we started talking and I started looking at his club and saying something about oh no, it's me. It's not the club. I go, that's what every golfer thinks. It's probably the club is helping you to have the issue, especially like in his case. It was, D0, D1 swing weights. It's hard. hard to feel the ball, feel the club head when you're swinging at 108 miles an hour, 110 miles an hour. There's not a whole lot of feel there. So, grip size. What size is the average store-bought grip? Man standard.
Right, the Tour Velvet.
Yeah. Well, how many men's standard size grips would I put on in a year? 20. Most people's hands are bigger than that.
Right.
And what happens when the grip is too small? They squeeze it, trying to hold on to it. What does that do? I have tension everywhere. Can I release the club? No. Can I even feel the head? No. When I'm squeezing it that tight, I have no feel of the club head. And most people, I would say probably 50% of the head or the grips when I was building a set of clubs were probably somewhere around a plus 132nd, which means 2 reps of tape, or you put a 580 core grip on a 600 core butt.
Right.
That would get you to that plus 132nd size. And then build up the bottom hand, because if you're right-handed, where's your bottom hand? Your right hand. Which is your bigger hand usually? Your right hand. If you're left-handed, which is the bigger hand? Your left hand. And where is it? On the smallest part of the grip.
Right.
So always would add an extra piece of tape for the bottom hand just to build it up a little bit. Now, some people like the taperless grips, like that Win introduced, and then now you have the plus 4s and stuff. But
right.
Grip size, huge issue. Most people look at it and go, well, it's got a grip on it. Yeah, but it doesn't fit you. That was the other comment the guy made when he hit my 9-iron. He was like, I didn't have to squeeze it for some reason. Well, yeah, because my grip size is a little bit bigger than what you have on there. I have 5 reps of tape under there. It's almost a mid-size.
Right.
The other things that you run into looking at people with irons.
That exactly. People using the Tour Velvet. Nothing wrong with that grip. I mean, I like the Tour Velvet, but the ones that just get it stock from the factory, they just put one piece of tape and they use the standard Tour Velvet, and it's like a pencil. That absolutely drives me insane. I can't tell you how many of my buddies have that freaking crap on their club, and they want to argue that they like it. I go, no, you don't. You absolutely do not like it. And that's why you hit errant shots with your iron all the freaking time, because your hands are bigger than mine and I play a mid-size. I would know. I was there. It's just, you absolutely have, well, first and foremost, you have head feel, right? I mean, that's a good thing. I will not deny that. But you're running out of grips, because you're wearing through grips like nobody's business, because of all that friction that you're creating with all the space between the club and your hand. And your gloves are wearing out too.
Hands are turning. Yep. You're
wearing out grips. You're wearing out your gloves. It's just an expensive thing. It's just, I can't tell you, Gene, after I switched my grips to a bigger size, my grips have lasted so much longer. I haven't had to replace my grips in probably 2 years. I'll be honest. And there are a couple grips that have a wear mark here and there. But I haven't had to replace my grips in over 2 years. And as far as gloves go, I don't have a glove that has lasted me less than 3 months. I still have gloves from 5-6 months ago that don't have any holes in them. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that grip's 6 years old.
At least.
Yeah. Right.
I wash it.
Right.
But
that's my point.
Not a wear mark on it.
And that's my point. And I'm not even one of those people that is very anal about their grips being clean all the time. Because I know I've played with guys too that they have their towel and they wet their towel and they wipe their grips after every single shot. I'm not like that. I'm not particular, about my grips being super clean all the time. And my grips are still fine. There's no wear marks. Like I said, there's maybe one every here and there on a couple clubs. But that is one thing I see all the time, is grips being too small. And that's for any club. That's not just for irons. That's for any club. And
right. Yeah.
You see older people, especially, they have the smaller grips and they wonder why they can't hit the ball. Well, it's like, first of all, you have arthritis. You have, you're a carpenter your whole life, or you worked blue collar your whole life. So you got these meaty freaking meat hooks of hands, and you're wondering why, you need a bigger grip. But yeah, that's mainly the issue I see.
Well, and the other thing that sometimes happens is a lot of driver shafts, the core size is bigger than an iron shaft. And so when you put a standard grip on it, it's automatically a little bit bigger. Like the NV, the Aldo NV is a 640, I think it was a 620 or 640 butt size. So you put a regular grip on it, it's almost a mid-size.
Right.
But iron shafts, they're all 600s or 580s. And so if you don't
those things feel like pencils.
Not going to be, yeah, exactly. But yeah, the moving of the hands, and again, for our listeners, if you go through grips and gloves, you got a grip size issue. You also might have the club too much in your palm, get it more in your fingers. But if you're doing it in your palms, you definitely need a bigger grip size.
For sure.
Just because look for your ring finger on your left hand. It should just barely touch your palm when you are gripping the club. If it digs in, it's too small. Wedges. I see a lot of people playing with Vokey wedges who can't chip. They need a wide sole wedge to help them, protect them from bounce or with the bounce, out of the sand. Same thing, so many people are playing with narrow soles. Now, again, if you have a wider sole, maybe you can't lay it open to be a 75-degree flop shot. But if you can't hit the wedge the way it is, what are you doing trying to hit the flop shot?
Right.
Put yourself in a wedge that is easy for you. If you're forever digging, one of the issues can be solved by a wider sole. Another thing that I'll see people do is they'll shorten the club. They got a short chip and they drop their hands. And what happens? Let's see, I got a wedge here because I've got my bag. So I bend mine flat so that when I'm chipping, I can keep it like that. But if I drop my hands, I got this nice leading edge that's now off the ground. And how many times do you see that person skull it across the green?
9 times out of 10.
You need to make sure that if you're choking down on it, that the club is still sitting flat.
Right.
Other thing is when people do this, turn it this way. What are they doing? This edge is lower than this edge. What are you going to get when you hit that shot? A lot of turf.
Mm-hmm.
You're bringing a knife and trying to, the odds on you picking that ball perfectly, unless you have practiced that over and over and over and over, not so good.
Mm-hmm.
That, keep that bounce. You hear them talking about it on tour, on TV. He used the bounce. Well, what does that mean? He used the bottom of the club. He doesn't have the face tipped forward. I see a lot of people set up with their hands way out in front, and then they'll put the ball back in their stance, and it's like, negative 15 degrees of bounce. And then they can resod their front yard after a few, you see them picking up the sod, sticking it in their bag so they can resod at home.
Right.
Let's see. Shaft weight. I'll see a lot of people playing with the same exact shaft weight that they have in their irons. Now, if you're playing dynamic gold S300s and you got Vokey wedges, they're S300s, they'll be taper tips. They'll be a little tiny bit heavier. But you got 60-gram shafts in your irons and you got 60-gram shafts in your wedges. What's your swing weight going to be? C8, C7, C6? Going to be an issue. Usually wedges 10 grams heavier than the iron shafts, minimum, maybe up to 15. Why? Because what do you do with a wedge a lot of times? Choke down.
Right.
Still have some feel. Swing weight. What's your swing weight on your wedges right now compared to what they used to be?
They're a D7 now. They were like a D1, D2. I mean, we weighed...
what happened to your wedge game?
Oh, it improved tremendously. Yeah. No, I had a lot more feel. I was able to, we talked earlier about, wedge shots and guys leaving out, A wedges and stuff. I don't like hitting full wedges all the time. So when we did do that, I was able to control my wedges even more and flight it down that I couldn't do before. So yeah, it definitely helps to have a little the right swing weight for that person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, most of the store wedges are D3, maybe a D4 every once in a while. But if your irons are D2, let's say, I would generally say a sand wedge needs to be around D5, D6 for most people, just to give you enough feel. Again, and if you choke down a half an inch, it's still, you got some feel there. But,
right.
The other thing I find interesting is where irons generally have gotten longer in length, wedges for a lot of companies have stayed short. So, like my gap wedge is 35 3/4. My sand wedge and lob wedge are 35 1/2. Now I'm 5'9 1/4. Most wedges in the store are 35. When I step up to a 35-inch wedge, and I enjoy hitting, my favorite yardage is 80 yards because that's my lob wedge, I take a full swing with my lob wedge. Now, am I trying to crush the ball? No, I'm just making a good swing. Put me in that 35-inch, it just feels so darn short. And I have, or I'm around the greens and the ball's below my feet. And now I have to widen my stance. And now I can't make a good turn. I would much rather me control the length by shortening it than the company control the length by giving me it short. I'm trying to remember what we did with your wedges. I think we lengthened yours just a little bit.
I don't think we did.
No? I was thinking we went 1/4 inch.
I don't think we did. We didn't really touch the length of my wedges, I don't think.
Okay. I was trying to remember, being old, you forget things like that. Let's see. And that brings us to putters. Number one thing you see with putters.
Grip size again. That's another one that I see. I'd probably say five, maybe 7 years ago, you'll remember this trend of those big fat wind grips, big fat grips.
Right.
And I remember, being a kid and seeing these big extra jumbo super strokes and the wind grips. And I was like, oh, those are so cool, but they didn't really help me. I'm also a very handsy putter. I like releasing the toe. So I naturally like a toe hang putter. So I like a just a standard or mid-sized pistol grip. For me, that's my preference. Another thing I see with people too, the zero torque putters are a huge thing right now. I see everybody with a lab. I think that's a fad. That's just my opinion. There's people out there that have statistics and data that prove otherwise. I don't care. It's a fad. But
I look at it this way though. If they were truly were superior, what would every player on tour be using?
Right. That aren't getting paid for it.
Right.
Right.
Well, I wouldn't even need to get paid for it if my putting improved.
Right. Right. I'd be winning more.
I'll make more money just because I'm using it.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's pretty much what I see with putters. I can't really think of anybody else. Oh, length is a big one. Yes, actually, yes. Length is a big one. When we talked with Adam Porzak, he tells us a lot of his students to have a shorter putter. And what does that do? It puts you in a more athletic position. You're getting closer to it. You're seeing the angles better. Length can dictate a lot of things, especially with angles and point of view. If you have too long of a putter and you're standing up taller per se, the angle is going to be a lot different when you're reading the putt, or when you're standing over the ball. You're going to see things differently than someone who has, for example, a 33-inch putter, and they're the same height as you. Let's say they're the same height. Let's say they're my height, so 6'1". Okay. If I were to have a 37-inch putter and a 34-inch putter, the same exact putt, the same exact position where the ball's at, I'm going to see two different breaks. And that might not make sense to a lot of people, but try it. Take a putter that's 37, or it doesn't have to be 37. It could be a long length putter, and a shorter length putter, same exact putt. And I want you to tell me what you see and what the differences are just from standing up taller and being down lower. Because also too, where your eyes sit on the ball is going to change as well. A lot of great putters, they putt with your eyes just behind the center of the golf ball.
Yep.
And
just inside.
Right. So that changes everything. Length changes a lot of things. People don't realize.
Yep. You know, being a math teacher, you know, Pythagorean theorem, you know, I said, you know, I just simply set the putter down where I can get my eyes over the ball. And then I reach down and I measure, you know, from my toe line to the center of the putter. I forgot how many inches that was, but it was some number of inches. And then I measure how far is it from my hands to the ground, straight down. And then, you know, I have my two legs of my triangle, and the hypotenuse is the putter. You know, my putter is 32.25 inches long. And I sometimes will choke down on it just slightly. But, you know, I'm watching a guy today. He had a 35-inch putter. His eyes were about 9 inches inside the ball.
Right.
And so you start, you know, instead of being able to look like, you know, this at the hole, he's looking like this at the hole.
Exactly.
And he missed every putt the same way.
Right.
Everything was right.
And that has everything to do with eye position and length.
Yep. Yeah. Because you can't get your eyes over the ball.
Right.
So you
There's
can't
no
look
way
down the line. You're looking across the line, and you're looking this way.
Mm-hmm.
And then depending on which is your dominant eye, how much outside or inside of that line are you really going to pick, thinking you're lined up with the hole? You know,
it just creates an inconsistent setup as well. You know, and setup is the biggest thing that people overlook. Setup. That is one of the biggest things that people overlook.
Well, if you set up wrong, how do you?
Right. The way you set up is how you start your golf swing.
Yep. I want to bat like this and stand with my feet on either side of home plate. It's not going to work well. You know? It's a poor setup.
Right.
You know, the other thing I see, and I don't know if you notice this because you haven't looked at this for 25 years, is watching the path of the putter going back and how many times you see the path go to the outside and then loop to the inside, or kind of, you know, the first movement is kind of a move, and that tells me
jabby
putter head's too heavy.
Right.
Need to counterbalance.
Right.
You know, and it's amazing when you can get the putter started back on the line you intend, how much easier putting is. You know, the other thing I'll watch is I'll see people doing, you know, pulling it way inside and keeping the face still facing the same direction. So all they've done is they've kind of made the back part of a C, and then they come and they have nice hook spin because now the face is close to the path that they're swinging it on, and they can manage to spin it to get everything going left. Or there are some people who can go from outside and come in and cut the ball. But the big thing is it's the wrong length. And, you know, face hang and stuff like that, you know, that's an important thing to understand. You know, I got this putter wants to go pretty much back straight and through. I have another putter that, you know, hangs about like that. And if I'm not putting really well, I'll miss a lot of putts left because what does it want to do? It wants to close, which is something you enjoy.
Right.
For me, that's something I fight.
Right.
So understanding that, is it going to make me, you know, if I have a center shafted putter versus one with toe hang, am I going to, you know, remove 9 strokes around in my putting? Probably not, but it'll at least be more comfortable because it'll feel more natural what you're doing. So with that, I think we've covered it all. We're going to be, we're still going to do our videoing of working with golf clubs, but I have a few people who have some questions, and I need to do a video if they need me to, because I can't explain how to do it. I need to do it on video, so we're going to throw it on to the other video, but I'm waiting to hear back from them. I was gone for 6 days, and the questions came, and They haven't gotten back. I've only been home for a couple of days. So Josh and I will do that. We're also going to be talking to a guy in Pennsylvania. He's agreed to come on. He's going to talk about what he has learned. He's a PGA professional, and he has tried all kinds of things to get fit and never found a good fitting. And so he's going to talk to us. And then we're also going to catch up with Doug from Tennessee and see how things are going for him. Again, want to encourage you, send us emails, send us questions. Again, I've spent about an hour yesterday morning answering emails. If you have questions, would love to try to help you. Anything else, Josh?
No, I think, like you said, we covered a lot of stuff today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the gold nuggets that we gave out to you guys today. Putting is a very important one too. The biggest one that I see is length. So I'm glad we were able to talk about that and get that out there. But send us emails, send us questions. Rate us on whatever platform you're listening to us on. Yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you in the next episode.
Yep. Tell your friends. God bless. I love you, Emma and Sammy, and we will see you next time.
Thanks for listening. If you have any questions or comments, don't hesitate to email us. In order for us to continue equipping you with great knowledge and content, consider blessing our show financially by checking out the links in the description below. See you next time on Club Fitting Chronicles.